Live.
Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red as we review the latest, but hopefully not the last, special night at the City Ground this season after Forest ended their FA Cup run with a 1-0 defeat at the hands of Liverpool. And to look back on the night, we're joined first of all by Forest fan and chief football writer for the paper, Daniel Storey. Hello, Dan, you well?
Yes, I'm well, you?
Yes, not too bad. I did say at the start I've got a bit of a cold or probably COVID. I'll have to do a test later, so I might be sniffling and blowing my nose this, but we'll get through it as well in the company of Forza Garibaldi's hungover looking Greg Mitchell. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello Greg, you okay?
I thought I was, yeah. I was feeling all right, to be honest.
It's probably the just wash your hair in the shower hair that betrays you. I don't know. But good to have you both with us. Greg, congratulations for the banner for Forza again. That's gone down very well. Did you have anything to do with this one?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, but the technical side of it, we're lucky to have a couple of, geniuses that come up with these ideas, and we've got a really good group of us now that, are just getting these ideas into production. So hopefully there's a few more to come, and shout out to Cags who designed this one, because you couldn't see it, but the detail that's in there, I think we've released now the actual design in some of the little secret, scribblings on Trent Bridge. It's well worth going to have a look at on our Twitter page.
I suppose the main message of it all is, I'm right, Greg, is what one generation to the next, isn't it?
Well, there's been a whole...
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, there's been a whole generation that hasn't had these famous nights as well, hasn't there? So you hope with this cup run, not just last night, there's little kids in Nottingham wanting that Forest shirt and not that Man United or Liverpool shirt. And it was, I know we didn't get the result, but it was such a special night. I thought it was quite an emotional night, and you'd hope it wasn't just in Nottingham, but we've kind of been put on the world map again with this cup run we've had. So yeah, I thought the display matched the occasion perfectly.
What was your takeaway from it all, and Dan, having been there at the game?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the atmosphere, like it's the little things, I think. Miss Rolling In has... I tweeted after the game to say it sometimes felt like that song's been sung out of kind of loyalty and duty over the last, let's face it, decade, on and off. And you hear it now, not just last night, and not just the FA Cup games, but the league games as well. And there's a real pride that is a representation of kind of new hope. And look, I thought that, personally, Greg, the tifo and the display before the match was amazing. I love the detail that it was a girl on her dad's shoulders. I love that it's kind of welcoming a new generation of Forest fans, but also a new type of fan, a club that's there for everybody, encapsulated perfectly. And obviously, you speak to, I spoke to Arsenal fans before and after the cup tie, and they were gutted to go out, but they look forward to that walk over the Trent. They really do. I know they've lost both third round games at our place, but they do really, they see that as something special in football, and we should celebrate it.
Yeah, and obviously we'll come on to the game in great detail, but the atmosphere, Greg, where does it rank this season? Was it, or in your whole experience of going to games, home games, was it the best one yet?
From the home fans, I thought it was as good as Arsenal. It was as good as Leicester, if not better. But I think even the Huddersfield game, this entire cup run has just encapsulated something. You see the Brian Clough stand all on their feet. Such a rare thing to see up until this season. And I don't know if have you seen that video of the guy about a mile away from the ground recording in his garden, and that's the Trent end. That is, once they start singing that song and the whole ground just follows it. It was brilliant. Yeah, it was as good as I've known it down there from the Forest fans.
What's it do for general? This is a wider point. What's it do for general mental well-being of a football fan? These are rough times in the world. It must be nice to take pride, mustn't it, Greg?
And the loss, we lost last night, and 5 minutes after the game, there wasn't many empty seats, was there? We watched the last two players walk off the pitch, and I just thought everyone's loving it so much at the City Ground. It was like we just wanted to get every last little second of it and, celebrate what a brilliant cup run it has been. But also, I feel like now we've had a real taste of how we'd match up against Premier League opposition, because it was by no means their second 11, was it, in any of the teams we played. And with the belief and the way that Cooper changes to get us playing, it shows that next season, if we were, well, not lucky enough, but if we did go up, I think we wouldn't be struggling each week. We'd still be loving going down that ground and getting results one way or another.
Yeah, before we come on to the wider promotion and Premier League picture, just the game itself, Dan, I read your report after I'd written our pre-show notes, and you seem to agree. It just hung on two incidents, really. Zinkenagel's miss and that clinical finish by Jota, who's come from the Championship to become probably, well, world class might be fair enough as a striker. Is that fair?
Yeah, and look, the difference between everyone at professional level from National League upwards, you see now on social media goals going viral from non-league that you could never hope of scoring yourself. And every player at every professional level has the ability to do that. What defines them as the best and the rest is A, being able to do it consistently, and B, being able to do it when it really matters in the big moments. Philip Zinkenagel is a fine footballer and may well continue to have a Premier League career, but the difference is that if that chance comes to Jota, he scores it. Liverpool were by no means perfect. Firmino missed the one-on-one, but I think we troubled them. I think we unnerved them. They were forced to play more directly out from the back than I thought they would be. I thought, particularly after the goal, I thought they would kind of sort of stifle Forest and try and suffocate the atmosphere a little bit. But the opposite happened, really. Forest gave it a real good go, and they were hanging on towards the end. And look, we don't want to be kind of accidentally patronising to our own club, but that means something. It means something beyond losing, beyond going out the cup. And Forest has been a club who have effectively chucked away cup competitions in too many seasons, to my mind, over the last 15, 20 years. And I think it's worth saying that one can propel the other. The cup run can propel the league form, and the league form can make you feel like you've got a chance in the cup. Yeah,
there were two slightly different moments, like under the radar moments, that sort of summed up for me. The first time Spence went at Van Dijk, Van Dijk was very nonchalant, and he saw him off, and it was great for if you're Van Dijk, whatever. But by the 75th minute, Van Dijk is leathering the ball sideways into the dugout, and that shows that Forest got at them. When that Zinkenagel miss happened, though, Greg, did you think that was the moment, or did you still believe?
Oh, you've learned not to treat Forest like we always have, but that moment in that game against one of the top teams in the world, it was so close, and it could have meant the difference. And you really did feel like that. That the players felt like that was the chance as well, because it was only a couple of minutes later they scored. So yeah, I feel for him, I really do, but it was a huge miss.
We feel like we've missed two or three of those type of chances in the last few games, hasn't it? You had, the one against QPR where Cafu hits a keeper at least, and Johnson scores the rebound. There was one against, I think there's one against Huddersfield as well, where the ball comes across last minute when we were winning and we missed one of those. That kind of Johnson cross from the right. That's the thing to work on in training, isn't it? Because that's the obvious chance for Forest to create, with Spence and Johnson creating something down the right and a cross coming in. And they just seem to have missed two or three of them in recent games.
They do create that chance a lot, don't they? I mean, Man City obviously get the ball to the byline and pull it back. Forest, it's get the wing backs or get Johnson in and play it low about 12 yards out, and someone slides it in. And normally Garner's a late arrival, or Zinkenagel. Obviously, this time it didn't happen. The goal itself, a lot of Forest fans are saying it's VAR's corrupt, etc., etc. You always get that debate, and you see a lot more VAR in the Premier League than I do, Dan. But I kind of felt actually the camera angle isn't level, and it doesn't give a fair description. If the line's level or the line's drawn on the TV and it says it's offside, then do we just have to say actually it probably or onside? We have to say it is onside and just accept it this time?
Yeah, we do. Unfortunately, the idea of VAR is that it would kind of remove these conversations, but actually it just enhances them, because you see kind of how the sausages are made in terms of the decision making. And yeah, it's a semi-automated process. We have to assume it's right. There is new for this season, or came in last August, this kind of margin of error, so that if the two thin lines are touching, then it's counted as onside. The attacker gets a benefit of the doubt with that. That's what happened last night. Look, they are we should be very proud that they are incredibly fine margins, both with that and the penalty call, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But I thought that was the right call again. I think if Alisson lifts his hand, then it's probably a penalty, but he didn't, so it probably isn't enough to overturn it. But the fact that we're sat here saying those were the differences, not 2 or 3 goals, is credit to us in itself.
Yeah, my only gripe with the penalty is probably a couple of years ago it gets given because players like Vardy and Kane and Ronaldo, they made this career almost of not cheating, but manipulating their foot to make contact. I don't think that's what Yates did here, but it looked like that. So I didn't think it was a penalty. Have you watched it back, Greg?
Yeah, and I'd agree with the penalty. On the offsides, it's just typical, isn't it, that when we played Chelsea that time and we had 4 and it was like his backside was off, if that was the game yesterday, it would have counted, wouldn't it? And the margin of error, it's kind of threw us the other way yesterday. So you could say it's just our luck, really. But the penalty, he dragged his foot, didn't he? And I think he made it look a little bit too obvious. So whether, again...
him kind of getting back to his feet and trying to get the ball again, which is the right thing to do, but it made it look like he was like, okay, I'm not getting a penalty here. I need to go and get the ball, don't I?
Is that the inconsistency of VAR a little bit, Dan? That there might have been a different actual video assistant referee, a different person who might have thought, actually, that was a penalty. I mean, you look at some, the Man City handball, the Everton, some very random decisions. It's basically a human thing, isn't it?
It is a human thing, and it also depends more than we'd like to believe on the original decision by the referee, which obviously in this case was no penalty, and therefore there was no overturning. If the referee gives that, maybe it doesn't get overturned, which then plays into the kind of psychology of officiating, because you think, well, VAR's there to help me out, so maybe I won't give it. But then if VAR doesn't think there's enough reason to look at it, maybe your decision would have been different in a non-VAR world. But again, look, we're talking about really fine margins in a game against not the first choice team, but not a reserve team by any means, of probably the form team in the world at the moment. So if we take a step back and think, that's what Cooper's big thing was after the game was, look, take a step back. We've done this. We've also not achieved anything yet. So let's use this as fuel to move forward.
I cut you off there, Greg. Sorry. Was there something you wanted to add?
I forgot if there was. You're fine.
If we go back to you talk about the team news. I mean, what did you make of the team when it came out, Greg? The Liverpool team. Did you think Forza got a chance here?
No, I thought it was strong. You recognise 7 or 8 of their players, and you think, I was glad though. I didn't want it just to be quite a few youth team players and this, that, the other. It was great to see Van Dijk in there, and I loved the fact that it clearly didn't faze us either. We put the strongest side out we could with all our injuries. I thought Figs played superb again. Now you've got no worries about him going forward for the rest of the season and covering the injuries. I thought Horvath last night cemented his number 1 spot. I think there's no debate at the minute that he's not number 1. There's no reason for him not to be in goal. Last night, playing against them players just gave me a lot more confidence that after, a deserved 2-week break, a lot of them are going to have now, we'll come back fighting. And, Grabs could have probably scored that chance last night, and he should be coming back sooner rather than later. So for me, last night did us a hell of a lot more good than bad, if I'm honest.
Yeah, a bit of a Dunn's death topic, Horvath versus Sam. But I felt it was the first game he looked like a number 1 to me in terms of confidence. Just quickly, Dan, where do you stand on that debate?
I think the first thing I'd say is it's really strong management from Cooper, because the easy thing to do is to bring Bryce back in. He's been very popular in that dressing room for a while. So to say, you're only getting this team on merit, and you made a mistake, you dropped discipline, you did something stupid. Look, he sees them both in training. He obviously trusts Ethan, and I just think it's brilliant management, and it sends a message to other players in the team that nobody's place is safe. If you play badly, then we've got competition for places in our squad that we just haven't had for a long time. And it's not necessarily, I don't think, that the squad's significantly better, although it clearly is in a couple of positions. It's that everyone wants to be in the team at the moment. Everyone wanted to play Liverpool last night. Everyone wanted to beat Leicester, and everyone wanted to beat Huddersfield so they could play Liverpool. And take that into the league form, and suddenly we're at the stage of the season now where players are thinking, well, I want to play at Wembley. You know, I've not played at Wembley before. I want to be I want to be the guy. I want to be part of the team that finally rules Forest out of this horrible playoff hoodoo that hangs over the club. And that's as important as, you know, as having players fit. Obviously, you know, it's going to be a big 2 weeks to try and get the likes of Grabs close to fitness, to get Cook somewhere along that way, to get McKenna hopefully fit again. But I don't think there's any fear from those players now, and that's all down to Cooper, I think. You know, I think 2 months ago, and I'll be honest, I even said it to a mate last night, I was worried when I saw Figs against Firmino and Jota. But he stepped up. They're not perfect. They will make mistakes. Some of them are not even, you look at someone like Jackie C, they're not even necessarily playing in their most natural position, but they care enough that, you know, they'll sprint back if they lose the ball. They'll cover for a mate if he loses it. And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, Figs was great, wasn't he? And Colback as well. I mean, he did get done for the goal a little bit because it's really good movement by Minamino. I think most players would get done for that. But the back four, Greg, I mean, I would have been worried when I saw the team a little bit, but that back four, led by Worrell, was magnificent, wasn't it?
And we still managed to play in a similar way, going from the back five to the back four. We still kept, you know, our system and the way we play against these teams. So, again, that was just huge confidence for people like myself, thinking, yeah, you know, they're not fazed by this. So it was fine, absolutely fine.
I think I said in our notes, please don't get injured, Joe Worrell. It is hanging on by a bit of a Joe Worrell thread at the back now, though, isn't it? In a sense, still, Dan. He's magnificent, but they can't lose any more players, can they?
Yeah, I mean, my big hope, and I firmly believe it is happening, is that you heard from Keenan Davies a couple of weeks ago after the Reading game, and he was talking about how Grabs is working with him. It's pretty clear that Steve Cook has had a fairly revelatory effect on some of those defenders. And Cooper has always been a manager, right back to the England under-17 days, where he wanted, you know, player coaches. Even, it doesn't matter how old you are, if you're a senior player, if you're a younger player, help each other out. And Cook's clearly doing that. If he continues to do, he's worked wonders for Worrell. He's clearly working with Figs as well. Yes, Scott McKenna coming back would be brilliant, and Steve Cook coming back is probably even more important, not least because it allows us now, as Greg says, to change between those systems and surprise opponents. You don't necessarily know which formation you're going to get when you play Forest if they've got more defenders fit. But I mean, Worrell last night was immense, and I think that the most pleasing aspect of this whole season for me as a Forest fan is it's the players who have in the past been criticised by us as fans, as by journalists, for not quite being at it all the time. And they're the ones that have stood up tallest. You know, Worrell's had his dips. Ryan Yates has had his critics. Grabs has even had his critics. But they're the ones that are standing up and leading this team now. And that's really important going into playoff season, because you look at the teams around us and people aren't winning. So there clearly is a team spirit there that's making something of Forest.
One other player to mention, a couple of people in the comments mentioned Ashley and Michael, is Joe Lolly, who I thought was, lack of action recently. I thought he was excellent. He looked confident and he worked tremendously hard, and that's a big asset, isn't it, Greg, to have him back?
Yeah, and he got subbed, didn't he? And standing ovation. Another player that probably wouldn't have had as many minutes the last couple of games without the injuries, and he just stepped up. And it's like a new signing, because, like I said in the last episode, I think some of us were worried that if these injuries keep coming and they were bad ones, he might have been done. But he looked like a very good player and a very capable player last night against that team. So, what's he going to be like against a Blackpool if he starts? It's great.
You wanted to come in on that. You're a big Joe Lolly fan, aren't you, Dan?
Yeah, I think he's a good guy. He's a humble guy. He's clearly had problems with injuries that I don't know, but I suspect stems from the fact that he went to uni. He wasn't a footballer from 15 onwards, getting medical treatment and rehab and recovery after games up until the age of 21, 22, 23, and I think that probably can make a difference. But he tries his socks off when he plays, even when it doesn't come off. He also allows us, if he plays on that right, he allows us to kind of split the threat a little bit if we put Johnson down the left for a game and obviously have Spence down the right, because Joe's happy to tuck in and do his defensive work if Spence is bombing on. So that maybe gives Forest a bit more of a kind of multi-dimensionality that we've possibly lacked, because look, it's very hard to stop Johnson and Spence in combination, but I think opposition managers were starting to realise that stop that, and you've got a chance of stopping Forest. So just gives us another option.
I don't think he played on a decent pitch. He's about 23 probably, because no offense to non-league pitches, they're not Premier League pitches. One other point from the game, I mean, should Forest really have scored? There were other chances. Was that Yates one a miss, or was the ball behind him? And then the Cafu one, that was a tough chance, wasn't it? How we judge those chances, Dan?
I think that the reality is that other than the Zinks chance, they're a collection of half chances, aren't they? And the reality, again, to go back to kind of the original point, is that you watch Premier League players week in, week out, which I'm lucky to do, and they turn half chances into great chances. And you can't before you've even worked out how their chances of scoring, they've scored 1 in 2 of them. Forest probably score, or Championship teams probably score 1 in 3 or 4 of them, and they would consider themselves unfortunate. I think they were lucky not to be behind at half time with the Firmino chance. That pressing from Liverpool in the first half is something that Forest haven't really seen in the Championship. That effectively, they've been pressed, but they've been able to kind of pass through that and then send a player through. And that, I think that probably not spooked them a little bit, but Cooper said after the game, he spoke at half time, said, look, you need to be a bit braver here. You need to move it quicker because they will harry you and they'll hassle you. And I think that got to us. But second half, they came out and they did the same to Liverpool. They robbed them of the ball. They forced them to kick it long. And as I say, I said whatever happens, no regrets. And I certainly wouldn't regret losing by 1 goal. But they are those half chances that you just hope that in the big games to come, we have to take those, because Forest, the reality is Forest promotion bid probably lies on around 10 or 12 moments over around 8 or 10 games to see whether they A, make the playoffs, and B, make it through them.
We'll get to the specifics of that in a minute, but picking up on what you said there about the moments and the differences in the Premier League, on the last one we did, we had Nick Marshall on, Greg was on, and we discussed what Forest would need in the Premier League. And Nick felt they had to keep this whole squad together and add 3 or 4 top quality players with Premier League experience to compete to stay up. I mean, what's your assessment if they can go up, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I don't think they should be afraid of continuing to use the loan market. There are now limitations on the number of players you can take from Premier League clubs. But one thing Cooper has done is he's revitalised Forest from a club where loan players tended to kind of sort of not drown a bit, but just sort of get lost in the noise, really. And he's turned it into a club that young players, I know for a fact, really, really want to play at. So they shouldn't be afraid of doing that. There are some absolutely excellent young players in the Premier League who Forest would be lucky to have and would be lucky to play a forward-thinking, possession-based team like Forest. I don't think they need to. The slight danger, and let's be honest, we're getting carried away here, is that they see that they need a new squad and they go and spend £8 to £10 million on 3 or 4 players who sort of fit the same mould as Forest have done over, 3 years ago and backwards, where 6 months later you sort of forget that 1 or 2 of them are even at the club. We've had this discussion before, Matt, where you could ask me to write down the Forest squad from 2017-18 and I reckon I'd miss 7 or 8 players. We've got to avoid that. We've got to go and get, players that really want to be at Forest, not players who you can sign, players that you think really will make a difference. And Cooper would play a huge part in that. He's an incredibly savvy, experienced man for his age, because he's got nearly 25 years coaching experience now, most of that with young players.
One interesting point in the comments that we didn't really pick up on about Jed Spence, who had a really good game, but the goal did come from him losing the ball. And I wonder if it maybe was a lesson learned about the very highest level. If you can go rampaging when you're a right back. I mean, Reece James and Trent Alexander-Arnold obviously do, but it'll be a good learning experience for him, won't it, Greg, last night?
Yeah, but on the other side, he has to take those risks for us to get the chance that we had to score, doesn't he? So I wouldn't want him not to keep doing that, or to be more cautious. It might ruin the way that he plays. So, yeah, he'll live and learn from that. But I hope he doesn't really change a lot at all, because we need him to keep doing that, especially in the Championship against players that shouldn't punish him as much as he was for it last night.
I think it felt like that Cooper had maybe asked him to tuck in a little bit on the right as well. He gave Tsimikas, a left back, quite a lot of space to cross the ball. And I think Cooper basically thought, look, we've got Joe Worrell in there who's capable and showed he's capable of heading out everything. So, and that almost cost him a little bit, because it made it look like he wasn't staying tight, he wasn't making tackles, he wasn't kind of being as all action as he normally is. I think Cooper just asked him to sit off a bit, and yeah, going forward, I mean, it was that first run of the match, he got tackled on about halfway and Liverpool broke, and you kind of thought, yeah, this is not going to be Championship football, Jed. But he's a confident young lad, he really is, and I mean, I think he'll be playing in the Premier League one way or the other next season.
What's his ceiling, do you think, Dan?
It's quite hard to tell, in that clearly he's a better player going forward than he is saying back. If he is to move to the Premier League and Forest don't get there, I would massively advise him to go to a club that's going to use him as a wing back, because I think that just gives him so much more license to push forward and do what he does best, and you've also got an extra centre back to cover you. That's where he's been at his best for Forest, no doubt. My honest answer is I don't know, because you look at the likes of Matty Cash, who I think Jed looks better for Forest than Cash did at times, and yet he's flourished in the Premier League. And then you look at someone like Ollie Burke, who's just got lost there. So it's so hard at 21 to make a difference, and so much of it is also down to attitude. And at Middlesbrough, there are clearly a few questions about that, but Cooper's got into him, and he looks a hell of a player in terms of his mind as well as his physical attributes at the moment.
Just on the wider picture, you hear Klopp talking glowingly about Nottingham now he knows what it is in his post-match comments, and Diogo Jota saying what a great team they are, and Arteta obviously knows now, and Brendan Rodgers does. What's this FA Cup run done for the club, Greg, do you think?
I think it's put us back in countries that have never heard of us before. I was lucky enough to be at the ground on Saturday sorting out all the TIFO, and there was 8 international TV companies there trying to set up, and they're all talking about Forest. They probably commentate on Liverpool week in, week out. So, they were talking about us and just reminding everyone what we're about. But what I would say is this stand really needs to happen if we're going to have a lot more nights like that last night, because they were scrambling there was wires everywhere and space. And I think hopefully, if it is the council that are holding things back, they see what special nights at the City Ground can come, and we need the facilities to go with that. So you'd hope nights like last night will help us, not just on the pitch.
Yeah. What did you make of Klopp's pre-match comments? I wasn't bothered by them. I think he's great, but some people took a bit of offence, Dan, to him not really knowing much about, or not professing to know much about Forest. I'm sure he did really. Yeah,
it's an odd. I remember Jose Mourinho saying that when he first came to England, he made a point of coming to Nottingham and seeing and being like amazed and walking over Trent Bridge and seeing the ground and thinking like, "What? This is the club that won a couple of European Cups," and being astonished by that. I think Klopp was 12 maybe, or when we won the first European Cup. Like, it feels like he should know Nottingham Forest, given that he is a football nut. So maybe it was just a kind of slightly twee pre-match line for the media. But he knows about us now, and that's all we can ask. I heard from a guy who I know who works for Liverpool last night, and he works with supporters in the role he does, and he was kind of saying there's probably 8 or 9 Premier League teams that have not given Liverpool as good a game as that last night. And yes, it wasn't completely full strength, and yes, there were no Mane and Salah, and yes, I am incredibly grateful for that fact. But we got at them in a way that teams don't, and if you can take that belief into Championship games, then there's no reason why we can't go up. The other thing that people say, and I was speaking about it this morning, and I think if you ask people of a certain age, probably 35 and older, for their ideal 20 Premier League teams, 95% of them include Forest in that list. And that's a compliment to the club. It's the history and it's a compliment to what we're doing at the moment. But for that not to feel patronising, we have to make good on that now. We've been given a real chance that none of us saw coming after the first 7 games of the season. And, like we said about players taking the chances, clubs, the best clubs, have to make the most of the chances that they didn't think were coming their way. And look, we've got 10 games now that present a chance like we've not had for far too long.
That kind of leads into one of the things I mentioned to you guys before we were recording about where Forest actually rank. So if they're in the top 20 list of Premier League clubs for everyone, if they let's say they get the new stand bills and they've got that capacity and they're well run and they establish themselves. I mean, are they? I think the clubs I use examples were they a Brighton, are they a Leeds, a Leicester, or a Villa? On that list, Dan, where would you put them?
I think this is an incredibly blasphemous thing for a Forest fan to say. I'm aware of that, but I think you have to park in terms of potential. Now you have to park history. That can mean something in terms of the feel of the club, and on the big nights, it certainly makes a difference. But the reality is that football over the last 10 years, is outside of the financial elite, has become a meritocracy. And the reason that Brentford are in the Premier League, and the reason that Leicester have done so well, and the reason that Brighton were pushing or have been pushing the top half is not because of the history. It's because they're incredibly well run off the pitch, that they have a clear identity, that they don't change managers all the time. And for too long, Forest made those mistakes. They probably allowed that history to weigh them down and create an expectation that we couldn't match. And we tried to chase that expectation too quickly. What I hope, and I'm starting to thankfully believe that Cooper and with Dave Murphy on board, they're doing is they're creating that identity, so that not only is the history there, but it also it becomes an ingredient in the success rather than a barrier to it, and it starts to mean something. But it can only ever be an add-on to what you're doing now. And what Forest needed to get right was getting it right now. And I'm not just giddy because it's been a good cut run, but I think we are doing that now.
What about you, Gray, in terms of potential, big picture, long-term future?
Yeah, I mean, what Daniel said, it's not blasphemous at all, but I think it has hindered us always looking at the past and almost saying, well, we deserve to be up there when clearly we don't. And the way we've turned things around this season, if we were to get up, obviously you're looking at survival first season, but also with the way we're playing, it could bounce us, it could propel us. And we've done it before, haven't we, where we get into the Premier League and then we have a really strong season. And I think, like you say, a few additions. I mean, it's amazing we're even talking about this, but I don't see why we can't rival our neighbours in Villa and Leicester and be, you want to be the biggest club in the Midlands, don't you? And I think Forest, with our fan base, the stadium will hold almost 40,000, new training facilities. Everything seems to be kind of slowly now coming into place, and the jigsaw pieces are all being fitted together.
Yes, but obviously you have to put those jigsaw pieces together and actually get there. So let's just spend the last 10 minutes or so just looking at the actual picture after the weekend. So I'll put the table up first, and that's how Forest stand. For those who are listening, not watching, they are 9th in the Championship, 58 points, 3 points off the playoffs. Blackburn in 6th. They have 3 games in hand on them, 2 games in hand on Sheffield United, and basically games in hand on everyone except Bournemouth. Results certainly went their way, with QPR losing, Blackburn losing, and a couple of other results being quite helpful. How are you feeling overall, Dan, since Greg's just disappeared?
Yeah, I mean, in points per games term, we're now 4th in the Championship, which is brilliant, is remarkable given the start to the season. It's also incredibly tight. Every club is losing, and I firmly believe, although I don't want to sound negative here, I firmly believe every club, including Forest, will go on a sticky run. Particularly given it's lovely having games in hand, but it also means that the end of the season is going to be incredibly hectic for Forest. But it doesn't look like, Luton aside, it doesn't really look like any of those playoff contenders are surging towards the playoffs. And the one thing Forest don't really feel like they've done during their various playoff heartaches is kind of ending the season strongly and sneaking in there. And it does feel like we can do that now. Clearly, there are massive games against Bournemouth, against Fulham, against West Brom, against Luton, and 4 of those 10 games conceivably Forest could lose. But even if they win the other 6 now, they should get there, which is, it's going to take, I think, 3 or 4 more points than it normally does to get in the playoffs, just because it's so tight and just because Fulham are so far away. But, play like they did last night. We keep saying it, and they can beat most Championship teams at home and most Championship teams away. And it now feels like clubs are starting to fear Forest a little bit. It really does, not just because of how we're playing, but because of how they're dropping points. You see QPR fans yesterday. they're talking about, Warburton out because he's lost the plot. You can see Blackburn fans worried that their form's dropped off a cliff. Bournemouth fans have even been worried they're not scoring, and we're kind of just bobbing along. And even when we don't play well, we tend to grind out points, which is a heck of a habit to have.
Yeah, I'm in a WhatsApp group for a fantasy league with a QPR fan. Warburton's got no plan B, is what he keeps saying. Yeah. What about you, Greg? I know you're going to tell me they're going to get in the playoffs, so let's qualify the question. Are they going to limp into the playoffs? They're going to power into the playoffs?
I think Bournemouth winnings probably took top two out of it. But that could be a good thing because, Bournemouth and Fulham, at least Fulham should be promoted by the time we play them. So hopefully they'll already be on the beach because we do play very well away. I think with the playoffs, we're going to get in them. I don't want to play Middlesbrough just because we lose Spence. So it'll be nice if they were the team that dropped out for us. But it'd be nice to get that home tie second leg. I think so. Are you looking at fourth place for that? I think it works. So look, it's not going to matter massively, but I think that a strong away performance to start it off and then get any team at home. We've seen the big games at the City Ground. We're not the old team that we have been. So we'll see.
Getting ahead of myself here. Do you have to give Richie Larea some games in case Jed Spence misses the playoffs?
Oh, yeah.
Or not? I mean, I haven't seen head and tail of him, but they're winning, so you can't complain. But do they have to get Larea some action in case Spence can't play, Dan?
I suppose so. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be, if it came to that, I wouldn't be surprised with them playing four at the back and poor Jack Colback having to play in another position, to be honest. I think it's a heck of a call to put Larea in a game like that. I suspect Cooper would probably have a little bit of experience there. But do you know what? Until Greg mentioned it and put the fear of God at me, I hadn't even considered about us playing Middlesbrough and Spence not being able to play. So, we'll see where we're at. But no, I'm still not wedded to the idea of Forest making it, I have to say. I think people are slightly underestimating that schedule of having 10 games left, even just having only 2 more than other teams, just allowing teams to have a week off. And then, the relentless Tuesday or Wednesday, Saturday program is really difficult. It's really, really difficult. And energy levels at this stage of the season are normally lower, particularly given the injuries we've been picking up. That's the game changer for me. If Forest can get through between now and the end of the season and Grabs is back and Cook's back and we don't get, Johnson doesn't get a muscle injury or Spence doesn't get a muscle injury, then basically a game changer for Forest.
Let's look at the fixtures then just to finish up. I'll put them on the screen. And again, for people listening on iTunes, not watching, it's Blackpool away next after the international break on April the 2nd. Then Forest have got Coventry and Birmingham at home, and then 2 very big games, Luton away, West Brom at home, and then the last 5 games are Peterborough, Fulham, Swansea, Bournemouth, and Hull City. Pretty decent run in, Greg, overall, do you think, or not?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of away games in there, isn't there? The last, 4 out the last 5 away. But like I say, we've got brilliant away form, so that shouldn't faze us. And it's nice to see a couple of the teams that are fighting for spots that we are as well, so we could really do some damage.
Is that a positive for you, Dan? I mean, does it hinge on, not entirely, but Luton and West Brom in consecutive games? If they can get 6 points from those after 6 from the next 3, that's a big step, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe even 4 if it's drawing away at Luton. I think, yeah. The massive benefit Forest have been handed with this cup tie is that we now don't play Fulham until late on in the season, where they probably will have been promoted by then. And it's always at this stage of the season where you look at the fixture list and you think, well, who's at the top of the league or who's near the top of the league? It doesn't always work like that. It works about who has something to play for. And you look at those last 4 games and you think, well, Fulham will probably be promoted by then. Swansea won't have anything to play for. Hull will probably be safe. And Bournemouth might well also have been promoted by then. And that then becomes massive, because when you've got one team that's even playing at 90-95% and one team that's playing at 100, that can be the difference.
Quick one just to finish, very short one just for fun. We did this last week with David Prutton and Mikey. Dan, your 2 teams to get automatic promotion and your 4 for the playoffs, out of curiosity, just from that table there.
Fulham and Bournemouth, I think, will go up. And then I think it will be Luton, Sheffield United, Middlesbrough, and Forest, which is sort of in my head the worst combination of teams that could be, with Sheffield United lingering there.
What about you, Greg?
Fulham and Bournemouth top 2. And I think we go in there in the... I mean, Blackburn's form's dropping off. Unless they get Brereton Diaz back soon, I think they'll be the ones that drop out. But Luton and Huddersfield have got a little bit of a gap, haven't they? But again, we could do some damage with beating Luton. So I think I'm just going to swap us for Blackburn. Keep Middlesbrough out of it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wouldn't bank on Huddersfield just yet. I'm a bit disrespectful to Huddersfield. They deserve more credit than they probably had for a massive unbeaten run, but their team doesn't look that good on paper. But then nor does Luton's. But
imagine the fireworks if we beat them in the playoffs. They didn't like them.
Their fans would not like that. No, but there you go. No, QPR are really labouring now, and Blackburn seem to have blown up a bit. So. Where are we looking just quickly as teams who could make the playoffs there, Dan? I mean, is it down to West Brom still, or I've included them, but is it out? Are they out of it?
I actually think they've probably got more chance than Coventry or Millwall at the moment, because it hasn't clicked yet under Bruce. But if it does, then they have at least got a new manager in place that, maybe bring a new mood. But to be honest, if you're looking at it, I think it's Forest upwards. I mean, we're obviously there because of, not just because it's tight, but because of the games in hand. And so then, with the clubs we talked about, QPR and Blackburn are out of form, and suddenly, as I say, Forest are 4th in points per game total at the moment. So they've every right to be looking up, not down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good note to leave it on. So we'll end there. Thanks for everyone who's watched along, dropped comments in as normal. And as ever, if you enjoyed this, to give us a good rating on iTunes and subscribe on any platform that you listen to it on. Greg, thank you very much.
No, cheers. Good to be on again.
And Dan, thank you very much. If you've got any books you do want to plug, I know you don't have any new ones out, but any existing publications, then do feel free.
No, don't worry about it. Nothing for this time.
Excellent. Well, you can read Dan in the iPaper and obviously get Forest News at Nottinghamshire Live. So do join us at some point during the international break when I fix up an episode. And otherwise, we shall see you all soon.